Hello, my friends. Welcome once again to our program, Spiritism, a closer look, and you are on Kardec Radio. By the way, Kardec Radio just celebrated 13 years of existence. Incredible. This past 4th of July. Incredible. 13 years. I'm Luiz Lima, and I'm going to be your host for tonight. And tonight, we are going to take a closer look at wealth. Before we even begin, let's just remember that we are talking about wealth from the Spiritist perspective. So our focus here is on the progress of the spirit, on the progress of the intelligent principle. That's where we are going to focus now. Sometimes, I don't know if it ever happened to you, but sometimes we hear people suggesting that we spiritists, we do not support or we do not approve wealth of any type. And that's simply no true. That's because they don't know exactly what is how Spiritism sees wealth. And by the way, that's the purpose here today. So let's just get started. We're going to start from the very beginning. We know about the universal Trinity as taught by the spirits. So we have three elements: universal Trinity, God, Spirit, and matter. God above all, then Spirit and matter. Spirit and matter have no common point. They are completely different. There's nothing in matter that is also spirit. There's nothing in spirit that's also matter. They are totally 100% apart, independent. So when we take a look at one of the sides, matter, and then we're going to take a look at the other side, spirit. So when we look at matter, we have all these things this material world with everything that we know of, chairs, desks, and physical bodies, and, windows and buildings. That's all matter. At the spirit level, we don't have any of that. At the spirit level, what we have is our repository of virtues and vices. At the level that we are, at least at the level that we are here on earth, we still have a lot of vices, but we have some virtues. Some of us have more virtues than vices. Some of us are the other way around, but regardless, we have our repository of virtues and vices in our spirit. Virtues and vices have nothing to do with the material world. You're independent from it. So when we think about wealth in general, and I believe for most people, if you just mention the word wealth, what comes to mind, including as a spiritist, if you're talking to somebody in the world, the word wealth comes on board. Most of us are going to think about material wealth. How much you have, how much you possess, different things. So we measure usually success and power by the material wealth. That means it is related to the accumulation of goods, accumulation of possessions. You have more cars, you are better off than those who have no cars. It's under the material perspective or the materialistic paradigm. If you have 2 or 3 houses, you are better off, those compared to those who have no house. And so and so and so and so on. So we measure, that's the word I want to get to. We measure wealth, which I'm calling here right now material wealth, to be very clear. So we measure that based on the accumulation of goods and possessions. Now, on the other side, because I'm calling material wealth for anything material, I'm going to call moral wealth on the other side of things, which is the side of the spirit. So, how do we measure material wealth? I'm sorry, moral wealth. How do we measure that? As we just saw, we measure material wealth by the accumulation of goods that a person has. How do we measure moral wealth? It's by the character. The character of a spirit, of a person, tells us if that person has accumulated more virtues than another one, or more vices than another one. That's how we compare things at the spirit level. So spirits that are more morally advanced, they have a better, overall, a better character. That's what indicates levels of moral wealth. Again, the level, what indicates the level of material wealth is the accumulation of goods. Well, let me mention a few things here, which I think we should consider. If you look at material wealth, certain things are worth, at least they are perceived to be worth more than others. For example, gold, diamond, those things are perceived as, wow, this is a lot of accumulation of goods. This gives me wealth. So when you look at this from the Spiritist point of view, the Spiritist point of view looks at matter as something that is a modification of the universal cosmic fluid. Nothing more than that. So there is no direct value attached. So think about this. Diamond. If you look at what diamond is made of, it's made of one element, which, by the way, it's in the periodic table of elements, carbon. So diamond is made 100% of carbon. Now, think about graphite. What is graphite made of? It's made of 100% carbon, the same carbon. The same carbon, because there are no two types of carbon. What makes it different is how the carbon molecules attach to each other, and they produce a different visual effect. Diamond is clear and very shiny. Graphite is kind of dull and very dark. And they're made exactly of the same basic element. That's all. Isn't that strange? But we assign a tremendous value, or at least what I'm going to call perceived value, to diamond, and no value at all to graphite. So isn't that interesting? So what makes us put so much value on, diamond? And the same for gold and other elements. So because the value that we put in is only looking at matter, nothing else. Because these things, they have no impact in the spirit world, because they are not spirit, they are pure matter. So our perception can trick us, ourselves. So if you are prone to a more material life, or say for those who are prone to a more material life, they have the perception, they have one certain perception on a particular situation or thing. A spirit that is more prone to a spiritual life, they look at the same situation, at the same thing, and they have a different perception. So, for example, for people who are more advanced, really, really, really more advanced at the average level that we are, they don't put any value on diamond. They don't put any value on gold. So, the more you progress spiritually, morally speaking, the higher you go up the ladder, the less value you put on those things. So, in order to get to that point, we need to go through a series of reincarnations. That's part of why reincarnations are needed. So we get to a point where these things, these material, straight material things, they decrease in perceived value. So think about this. For example, think about, I'm not even going to say Jesus, that's too far out. But think about people like, say, Mother Teresa, for example, universal figure known around the world. What value do you think she would give to, a piece of gold, some diamond jewelry? No value, because she was a very advanced spirit. And this way for all of them, like Medium Chico Xavier in Brazil and so many others. The higher you are at your as a spirit in terms of evolution, the less value you attach to these things. One interesting situation is, for example, you are inside a plane, you are in a plane is flying, and then things go wrong and the plane is going to crash, and you know it's going to crash because you're inside and you're being told, brace for impact and whatever it is. So the plane is going to crash. So if you look around, all say 300 passengers, at that point, even before the crash, they are all the same. They all have the same value, which is the value of a human life, which we cannot even attach a figure in dollars or euros or whatever uh, currency you use. At that point, there is no difference. Titanic, a sinking ship. It took hours for the ship to sink, but obviously, everybody knew they were not going to make it. But for those who didn't, because it was getting difficult. So those left behind, they knew it was going to happen. They knew they were not going to make it. And still, you had in that ship, you had, the travelers. Some were very rich, some were somewhat rich, and some were just people in the crew trying to make their, trying to get by. And at that point, it didn't really matter. The amount of money they had in the bank didn't really matter. So perception is relative. Perception on wealth is relative. Those who have, a lot of money, but really a lot of money, they might not think that they have a lot of money. They might think they are a little better than us, than the rest of us. Because it's not really, it's not a matter of right and wrong, please. It's a matter of perception. And perception is directly attached to where you are on the scale of evolution. So, Allan Kardec makes a comment to the answer given by the spirits on question 824. We're not going to go through the question. I want to go through his comments to the answer. He puts a beautiful phrase that I think summarizes a lot more what we're trying to say here. The phrase is, or it's a short paragraph, 4 phrases in a paragraph. Here it is. I'm just reading to you. The grave is the place of meeting for all humankind. Everybody the same. All human distinctions are mercilessly ended there. All right? So in the grave, there is no rich, there is no poor, there is no better, there is no worse. In terms of material possessions. The paragraph continues. The wealthy will try in vain to perpetuate their memory by means of ostentatious monuments. Time will destroy these monuments just as it destroys their bodies. And that's how nature goes. So for us, we don't have to read this and think too much about it. Just think of this. When somebody dies, they go, right? Visually, they're no longer on site, but the car is in a garage. The computer is on the desk. The TV is in the living room. Nothing of those things go with them. Obviously not. So none of this goes. And why is that? Why you can't take it? Because they go back to the spirit world where there is no place for matter, material things. You can't take it. Simple as that. What would you do if you were able to take the TV with you to the other side? What would you do? What channels would you be able to see? What outlet would you be able to plug your TV on? Makes no sense. Because when you go to the other side, all of us, myself included, of course, we are going to go through spiritual, moral, intellectual education. And for that, we don't need anything material. We need material things to practice what we planned on before coming on board to this reincarnation here. And then, yes, we are going to need material resources to go through our reincarnation. Money or wealth is one of the resources, nothing more. Material goods are neutral. They are unbiased. There is no good or bad. It's just matter. It depends on how you deal with it. So material possessions are not parameters that we can use to differentiate spirits. Who is better, who is not? We cannot differentiate spirits or intelligent principles using material possessions as parameters. Two people can be given the same wealth, by, let's say, you inheriting a lot of money. So for two people can get, large amount of money that came from family. One of them gets that money because he will do a lot of good things with that money. He or she is going to help a lot of people, create hospitals, institutions, something that is focused on helping others. That's one of them. The other person might just get all that money because they have to expiate. They had money in the past and they didn't know how to deal well with it, and they're being given a second chance. So you see, the amount of money, the figure in dollars, it doesn't matter. That's not the point. It can be the same figure in dollars for those two people. It's not the dollar amount. It's what they're going to do with this. In question 816 of the Spirit's book, Allan Kardec puts another comment, also an interesting comment. He says, God tests the poor through resignation and the wealthy through the use they make of their wealth and power. Interesting, right? So that's how this resource can be used. You have to use this resource, money, wealth, with responsibility. We have free will, but free will implies in facing the consequences of something or anything that we do. If we don't do well, if we don't do good, we are going to have to offset. We're going to be tried and have an opportunity to offset that and make better choices in the future regarding that particular thing, wealth in the case here. So Allan Kardec asks another thing then, which is, he asks the spirits, what is more dangerous to humans, wealth or poverty? And the spirits respond, they are equally so. Poverty provokes complaining against providence, whereas wealth leads to all kinds of excesses. So you see, it's not having or not having money. It's what we deal with, how we deal with the situation. So if I'm incarnating here, and for some reason, for this incarnation, I had to come in under very difficult circumstances, under, living in poor locations with scarce resources. That's because I'm being tried. I had to go through that experience. In order to be perfect, we have to go through all possible experiences, anything and everything that is possible. Living in poverty is one of them. Living in richness is another one. And we're going to go through both. But as we go, if we make it wrong, we have to redo it. We have to offset before we can move on. So in certain cities, especially big cities, these huge cities across the globe, it doesn't matter where you are. Each country has a rich city, or most of them. So in these big cities, there are areas in which you have the rich and the poor population living apart from each other on a very short distance. They're almost side by side in certain places. And that puts an extra challenge, because if you're already, say, poor because of, past circumstances from previous lives, if you are experiencing poverty and, less than a mile from you is the richest location, the richest place in that same city, it's going to impose an even more difficult trial for you, because you're right there. You're looking at how, the rich people are doing, the wealthy people are, what they do, what they have, what they possess. So it's an extra level of troublesome. And the same way for the rich, because if they come rich, if they come rich and they don't do what they're supposed to, what are they supposed to use their money, their resource? Let's talk about resources more than money. They use their resources to help those who don't have the same opportunities, materially speaking, who didn't have the same, they're hungry, they need food, they need other things. If they don't do that, they are not very advanced spirits, and they will very likely complain that the poor population, the poor population lives nearby, and they don't want to see that. So in certain places, because God is perfect and we all need to go through everything and anything possible, yes, we will be poor living right by the rich, and sometimes be rich living right by the poor. That's how we are going to be tried in our purposes in life. So wealth, it is this, like this book says, this book here, Spiritism in its simplest expression. Wealth is a deposit which holders are nothing more than users. Since they cannot take it to the grave, they will render a strict account for the use they made of it. Wealth is more difficult than poverty because the former, meaning poverty, wealth, is a temptation to abuse and excess. And it's harder to be moderate. And finally, on that book, ambitious persons who succeed and wealthy persons who revel in material pleasures are more to be pitied than envied because of the consequences. And like I said, to achieve perfection, we need to go through everything and anything possible. So when it's our time to be wealth, we need to make good use of our resources with responsibility. Something that makes our character better, denser than before. So we live that life as a better character. And in order to learn all of this, Spiritism is out there. Spiritism is out there showing us all of this and its consequences. Now, we all have free will. Spiritism does not change anybody. You have to change yourself. Spiritism gives you the tools to make that step, take that decision. Spiritism is going to teach us about divine justice. So the quest about poor and wealth is going to be seen, hopefully, from a different light. So again, to end up, the true legacy of a person is not what they leave in the house, is not what they had, is not what's in the garage. The legacy of a person is not what they possess. The legacy of a person is his or her character. And that's the most important thing. Before we close up for tonight, I wanted to just mention a few words about what you see here down on your screen, KardecFlix.com. KardecFlix.com, it's a new endeavor, if you will, from Kardec Radio. It's a platform that contains the contents inside this platform are tremendous, are enormous. You're going to find movies, interviews, documentaries, videos of all kinds, contents for kids and teens, all under the light of Spiritism. There are books to be studied. There are studies of different types. It's a great hub of resources. So, check it out. Don't let it go by. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing. KardecFlix.com. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. We will be here next week, Spiritism A Closer Look. Don't forget, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time.